The stars above London had never looked so crowded. Massive ships hung in the sky like dark clouds blocking out the moon. They had arrived 3 days ago, and Earth had not been the same since. Commander Thexlar stood in the center of the training arena, his scaled skin gleaming under the bright lights. He was tall, nearly 8 feet, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like hot coals. Behind him, 50 more Zirathi warriors stood in perfect formation. They had come from across the galaxy to witness this moment. "Your species claims to have warriors," Thexlar said, his voice booming across the arena. Translators hummed, turning his words into every language on Earth. "We shall see if this is truth or fantasy." In the opposite corner, 12 men stood ready. They represented the best special forces units Earth had to offer. Navy SEALs from America, Spetsnaz from Russia, GIGN from France, SAS from Britain. Each man had trained for years, survived impossible missions, earned their place among the elite. General Patricia Moss watched from the control room above. Her hands gripped the railing so tight her knuckles turned white. This was not supposed to happen. First contact with aliens should have been about peace, about sharing knowledge. Instead, the Zirathi Empire had turned it into a test of strength. "Begin the first trial," Thexlar announced. The arena floor shifted. Walls rose from the ground, creating a maze. Somewhere inside, Zirathi hunters waited. The special forces operators had to reach the center and capture a flag. Simple enough, except the hunters could see in the dark, move faster than any human, and had weapons that could stun from 50 feet away. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison led the SEAL team in first. He had 20 years of experience. He had survived missions in deserts, jungles, and frozen mountains. But 15 minutes later, he stumbled out of the maze, his team unconscious on floating stretchers behind him. "Too slow," Thexlar said. "Too loud. Too predictable." The Russian Spetsnaz went next. They lasted 18 minutes. Then the French GIGN, 21 minutes. Each team tried different tactics. Each team failed. The cameras broadcasting to Earth showed defeated faces. The cameras broadcasting to the galaxy showed something worse. They showed aliens laughing. Thousands of species across hundreds of worlds watched as humanity's best warriors were treated like children playing soldier. Colonel Vladimir Petrov, the Spetsnaz commander, sat with his head in his hands. "They are too fast, too strong. We cannot win this way." Captain Henri Dubois nodded slowly. "Their technology gives them too much advantage. They see everything we do before we do it." General Moss received a message on her tablet. It was from the British contingent. She read it twice, then looked out at the arena where Thexlar was giving another speech about human weakness. "What about Hale?" she asked the British liaison officer standing nearby. Major Tom Fletcher shifted uncomfortably. "He withdrew yesterday. Minor training injury. Twisted ankle during practice." "Convenient timing," Moss said quietly. Fletcher said nothing, but the smallest smile crossed his face before he controlled it. The trials continued for 3 more days. The Zirathi created different challenges: urban combat, hostage rescue, wilderness survival. Each challenge was designed to showcase human inadequacy, and each time the Special Forces operators failed. Not because they were bad soldiers. They were the best Earth had. But the Zirathi were stronger, faster, and had centuries of advanced technology. It was like sending knights to fight tanks. On the 4th day, Thexlar called all Earth's leaders to the arena. Representatives from every nation gathered, their faces showing fear and anger in equal measure. "Your trials have concluded," Thexlar announced. "The results are clear. Humanity possesses no warriors. You have soldiers, yes, competent for a primitive species, but not warriors." He gestured to the Zirathi warriors behind him. "These are warriors, born to fight, bred for combat, enhanced by technology. We have conquered 300 worlds. We have defeated species stronger than yours, faster than yours, smarter than yours." The arena fell silent. People watching from Earth held their breath. This was the moment they had been dreading. Therefore, humanity will join the Galactic Empire as a vassal species. You will pay tribute. You will provide resources. You will obey our laws. In return, we will protect you from species that would simply destroy you. "We need time to discuss this," said President Chen of the United Nations Council. Thexlar's laugh echoed through the arena. "You need time to accept reality. You have 3 days to prepare the surrender documents." That night, in a secure bunker beneath London, 5 people sat around a table. General Moss, Major Fletcher, Morrison, Petrov, Dubois. The best special forces minds Earth had. There has to be a way, Morrison said. We can't just surrender. We tried every tactic we know, Petrov replied. They countered everything. That's because we fought on their terms, Fletcher said quietly. All eyes turned to him. We accepted their challenges, their rules, their arena. That's not how the SAS operates. What are you suggesting? Moss asked. They granted us one more option. A mercy trial, they called it. One human warrior against their champion in a neutral environment. Not an arena. A real world. If our warrior survives 48 hours and reaches an extraction point, Earth gets conditional membership instead of vassalage. Survives? Dubois shook his head. That is suicide. Texlar is their greatest champion. He has never lost. Then we send someone who doesn't plan to just survive, Fletcher said. He pulled up a file on the screen. A photo appeared. A man in his late 30s, average height, lean build with steady gray eyes. Sergeant Major Marcus Hale, 22 SAS, 15 years in the regiment. Morrison studied the file. His record is impressive, but he's not superhuman. How is he supposed to beat Texlar? He's not supposed to beat him in a fair fight, Fletcher replied. But the SAS doesn't believe in fair fights. We believe in winning. Moss leaned forward. Is Hale really injured? Fletcher's smile returned. He can walk just fine, ma'am. But we needed him out of those arena trials. We needed them to not see him, not study him, not prepare for him. You planned this from the start, Moss said. Not planned, ma'am. Hoped. We hoped humanity would get one more chance, and if we did, we wanted our best option ready. Petrov looked at the file again. What makes Hale special? He's not special in the way the Zirathi think of special. He's not the strongest or the fastest, but he's survived situations that should have killed him. He thinks differently, adapts constantly, and most importantly, he's been studying every second of footage from their trials. He knows how they think now. Does he know about this mercy trial? Morrison asked. Not yet, but when I tell him, I already know what he'll say. Fletcher stood up. Marcus Hale doesn't quit, and he doesn't lose. 2 days later, Earth's representatives met with Texlar again. They accepted the mercy trial. The Zirathi commander laughed when he heard the news. You would send one human against me? This is your final act of defiance? This is our right under your own laws, Moss said firmly. You offered the trial. We accept. Very well. Choose your world. They chose Krava 9, a death world the Zirathi used for training. Jungle terrain, hostile wildlife, extreme weather. The Zirathi had trained there for generations. Surely, they thought, a human would die within hours. And who is this brave fool? Texlar asked. The doors opened. Marcus Hale walked into the room, moving with a slight limp. He wore simple fatigues, no decorations, no medals. He looked ordinary, forgettable. Texlar stared at him, then burst into laughter. This is Earth's champion? An injured soldier who hid from the trials. Hale said nothing. He just met Texlar's glowing eyes with his own steady gray ones. Something in his gaze made the Zirathi commander stop laughing. You understand you will die? Texlar said. Maybe, Hale replied quietly, but I won't make it easy. The mercy trial would begin in 3 days. The galaxy prepared to watch humanity's final humiliation. But somewhere in Britain, the SAS instructors who had trained Marcus Hale were not worried. They had taught him one fundamental lesson that the Zirathi had never learned. The prey that fights back is the most dangerous of all. Marcus Hale sat in the quiet room beneath London, watching footage for the 100th time. On the screen, Zirathi warriors moved through the arena trials with mechanical precision. Fast, strong, efficient, but also predictable. Major Fletcher entered with 2 cups of tea. He handed one to Hale and sat down beside him. You don't have to do this, Marcus. No one would blame you if you walked away. Hale took a sip of tea, his eyes never leaving the screen. Yes, they would. And I'd blame myself, Fletcher nodded. He had known Hale for 12 years, had served with him on 3 continents, had seen him do impossible things. But this was different. This was not just impossible. This was nearly certain death. Tell me about him, Hale said, pausing the video on Texlar's face. Fletcher pulled up a detailed file. Commander Texlar, Warcast Elite, 73 years old by their counting, which makes him about 40 in human years. He's won 217 honor duels, never lost, killed the champion of 6 different species to prove Zirathi superiority. Weaknesses? None we've identified. He's stronger than any human, faster, better reflexes. His skin can resist small arms fire. He has 4 arms, which means he can fight from angles we can't naturally counter. That's not what I asked, Hale said quietly. Everyone has weaknesses. What makes him angry? What makes him scared? Fletcher thought for a moment. Pride, maybe. He's never failed. Never even come close. That kind of record breeds arrogance. Good. Arrogance I can use. Hale rewound the video to show Thexelar fighting a Spetsnaz soldier. Watch here. He blocks the punch, then showboats before finishing the fight. He's not just winning. He's performing. He needs people to see him win. The fights are broadcast across the galaxy. It's part of their culture. Victory means nothing if no one witnesses it. Hale smiled slightly. Then I'll give him an audience. And I'll give them something they've never seen before. Over the next 3 days, Hale prepared. But not in the way the Zirathi expected. He did not train with weapons or practice combat moves. Instead, he studied. He studied Krava 9, the jungle world where the trial would take place. He memorized terrain maps, weather patterns, indigenous species. He learned which plants were poisonous, which animals were territorial, which parts of the jungle flooded during rain. He studied Zirathi psychology. Their culture valued honor and direct combat. They believed strength and technology made them superior. They had never faced an enemy who fought dirty, who used the environment as a weapon, who refused to play by their rules. Most importantly, he studied the previous Mercy trials. The Zirathi had offered this challenge to 17 other species. All had failed. All had sent their strongest warrior, given them advanced weapons, and watched them die trying to fight Thexelar directly. They're thinking like warriors, Hale told Fletcher. I need to think like a survivor. Dr. Sarah Chen, the mission psychologist, came to evaluate Hale on the 2nd day. She had to confirm he was mentally fit for the trial. She sat across from him, studying his calm demeanor with concern. Do you understand the statistical probability of your survival? She asked. Less than 1%, according to the analysts. And you're still going? Hale looked at her directly. Doctor, I've spent 15 years in the SAS. I've been dropped into hostile territory with no support. I've survived behind enemy lines for weeks with minimal supplies. I've been shot at, blown up, hunted, and left for dead more times than I can count. Do you know what I learned from all that? What? Statistics don't matter when you refuse to accept them. The enemy thinks I'll fight like those other species did. Stand and fight. Be honorable. Be predictable. But I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to make him hunt me on my terms, in an environment where his advantages mean less than he thinks. Chen made notes on her tablet. And if you fail? If you die out there? Then at least I'll die making them work for it. Maybe someone watching will learn something. Maybe some other species will realize the Zirathi can be fought differently. He paused. But I don't plan on dying, Doctor. I plan on surviving. And if I'm lucky, I plan on teaching that arrogant bastard what happens when you underestimate humanity. Chen approved him for the mission. On the 3rd day, Hale met with the other Special Forces operators, Morrison, Petrov, Dubois, and a dozen others who had failed the arena trials. They looked at him with a mixture of respect and pity. What can we do to help? Morrison asked. Tell me everything you learned about them, Hale said, not the official reports. The instincts, the gut feelings, the things you noticed but couldn't prove. For 3 hours they talked. Morrison mentioned how the Zirathi seemed uncomfortable when the arena's lights dimmed. Petrov noted that they always moved forward, never retreating even tactically. Dubois observed that they communicated through hand signals more than technology, suggesting their equipment might have limitations. Hale absorbed it all, building a picture of an enemy that was powerful but had never been truly tested. They had conquered through overwhelming superiority. They had never needed to adapt because they had never met a challenge that required it. You're going to do something crazy, aren't you? Morrison said when they finished. I'm going to do what the SAS has always done, Hale replied. I'm going to be the chaos they can't plan for. That night, Hale packed his gear. He refused most of what they offered him. No advanced weapons, no high-tech armor, no tracking devices. He took basic supplies, a knife, a length of rope, matches, a basic first aid kit, a canteen, the kind of equipment any Special Forces soldier would carry on a survival exercise. You're going in nearly naked, Fletcher said, watching him pack. Good. Let them think I'm helpless. Let them think this will be easy. Marcus, they're going to hunt you with everything they have. Thexler won't be alone. He'll have a pack of elite warriors with him. I know, but numbers mean nothing in the jungle if they don't know how to use them properly. And from everything I've seen, the Zerathi fight like they're in a tournament arena, not a real environment. Fletcher handed him a small radio. This is for extraction only. Use it when you reach the extraction point or if you need emergency evacuation. I won't need evacuation, Hale said firmly. The night before the trial, Hale slept soundly. No nightmares, no fear. He had done this same thing dozens of times before. Different enemy, different stakes, but the same basic principle: survive, adapt, win. The morning of the trial, a Zerathi transport ship took Hale to Krava 9. He sat in the cargo hold, alone. The Zerathi crew avoided him, speaking in their own language, occasionally glancing at him with what looked like pity. Thexlar appeared before they landed. He stood in the doorway, his forearms crossed, his glowing eyes studying Hale. I have killed warriors twice your size, Thexlar said. I have defeated species that could tear you apart with their bare hands. What makes you think you can survive against me? Hale stood up slowly, meeting the alien's gaze. Because I've spent my whole life fighting things bigger and stronger than me. And I'm still here, Thexlar laughed. Courage is meaningless without strength. Maybe, but strength is meaningless without intelligence. Hale shouldered his pack. See you at the extraction point, Commander. The confusion on Thexlar's face was brief but visible. No one had ever spoken to him with such confidence. No one had ever suggested they might actually win. The transport ship broke through Krava 9's atmosphere. Below, an endless green jungle stretched in every direction. Rain hammered against the hull. Thunder rumbled in the distance. This was a world designed to kill, even without predators hunting you. Hale checked his gear one last time. Across the galaxy, billions of beings were watching, waiting to see another human fail. But Hale was not thinking about them. He was thinking about terrain, about weather patterns, about how to turn a hostile environment into an ally. The door opened. Hot, humid air rushed into the cargo hold. The smell of wet earth and growing things filled his nose. You have 48 hours, a Zerathi officer said. The extraction point is 100 kilometers north. Commander Thexler and his hunting pack will follow 30 minutes after you land. May you die with honor. Hale stepped to the edge of the door. Below, the jungle canopy waited. He looked back at the Zerathi officer one last time. I don't plan on dying at all. Then he jumped into the green hell below and the hunt began. Marcus Hale hit the jungle canopy hard. Branches whipped past him as he crashed through layers of leaves and vines. His training kicked in automatically. He twisted, grabbed, controlled his fall. He landed in mud 20 feet below the canopy, rolling to absorb the impact. Pain shot through his shoulder, but nothing was broken. He lay still for a moment, listening. The jungle was alive with sounds. Birds calling. Insects buzzing. Something large moving through the undergrowth nearby. Rain pattered on the leaves above. He checked his pack. Everything intact. He checked his knife, secure in its sheath. He checked his radio, still working. Then he checked his watch. 29 minutes until Thexlar and his hunting pack arrived. Not enough time to run far, but enough time to start changing the game. Hale moved through the jungle with practiced efficiency. He was not running. Running left obvious trails and exhausted you quickly. Instead, he moved deliberately, placing his feet carefully, using the terrain to mask his passage. But he was not trying to hide. Not yet. First, he needed them to find him, or rather to think they had found him. He reached a small clearing near a stream. Perfect. He set down his pack and got to work. He crushed leaves and broke branches, creating clear signs of his presence. He filled his canteen from the stream, making sure to disturb the mud. He even left a clear footprint near the water's edge. Then he moved 50 meters upstream, walking in the shallow water to avoid leaving tracks. He found a dense thicket of thorny vines and pushed through, ignoring the scratches. On the other side, he began moving north toward the extraction point, but at an angle that would take him through the roughest terrain he had mapped. Above, in orbit, cameras tracked everything. The broadcast had begun. Across the galaxy, billions watched as the small human disappeared into the green maze. In the Zerathi command ship, officers studied the screens with interest. They had done this 17 times before. They knew how it would end. The human is already making mistakes, one officer said, pointing to the clearing where Hale had left obvious signs. He stopped to rest too soon. Wasted time. He is frightened, another agreed. They always are. But one older officer, a veteran of many campaigns, frowned at the screen. Something felt wrong. The humans' movements before the clearing had been careful, controlled. Why become careless suddenly? On the surface, Thexlar and his hunting pack landed. There were 5 of them. All elite warriors, all veterans of countless hunts. They carried advanced scanners, weapons that could stun or kill from 100 meters, and communications equipment that would let them coordinate perfectly. Find his trail, Thexlar commanded. I want this human found within the hour. It took them less than 10 minutes. The clearing by the stream was so obvious even a child could have tracked it. He went north from here, one hunter reported, studying the ground. Moving quickly, careless, Thexlar smiled. They always panic. They always run. This one will be no different. They followed the trail north, moving fast through the jungle. Their superior strength let them push through obstacles that would slow a human. Their technology showed them heat signatures and biological signs. Within 30 minutes, they had closed half the distance to where their scanners said the human should be. But when they arrived at that location, there was nothing. No human, just more jungle. Scan again, Thexlar ordered. The hunter checked his equipment. The trail ends here. No tracks beyond this point. No heat signature, nothing. For the first time, doubt crept into Thexlar's mind. Spread out. Search the area. They searched for 20 minutes. Found nothing. It was as if the human had vanished. What they did not know was that Hale had never gone to that location. The trail they followed was false. He had used mud and leaves to create fake footprints. He had broken branches at human height to suggest passage. He had even left pieces of torn cloth on thorns to make it look like he had pushed through carelessly. But he had done all of this moving backward, carefully, before he ever left the clearing. The trail they followed led nowhere because no one had actually walked it. Meanwhile, Hale was 2 kilometers east, moving through a section of jungle so thick the scanners could not penetrate it properly. He moved slowly now, conserving energy, planning his next move. He found what he was looking for an hour later. A tree with large thorns and sap that he recognized from his research. The sap was toxic to most species. Not deadly, but it caused severe irritation and pain. He carefully collected some in a leaf, being sure not to touch it himself. He also collected other things as he moved. Vines that were strong enough to use as rope. Bamboo-like plants that could be sharpened into stakes. Seed pods from a plant that made a loud popping sound when they burst in heat. By the time night fell, Hale had moved 15 kilometers from where the Zerathi had lost his trail. He found a good position on high ground, near a game trail where animals clearly passed regularly. He set up his first real trap. It was simple but effective. A trip line made of vine, positioned across the trail at ankle height, connected to a bent sapling that he had loaded with the toxic sap. When triggered, it would whip across and spray the sap into the face of whoever tripped it. He set up 3 more similar traps around the area, creating a perimeter. Then he climbed a tree and waited. The Zerathi had night vision, but so did the jungle predators. As darkness fell, the sounds of the jungle changed. Larger animals emerged to hunt. Something with many legs and glowing eyes passed below Hale's tree. It was bigger than a horse and looked like it could tear apart anything in its path. Hale remained absolutely still. This was another advantage the Zerathi did not understand. Humans could be patient. Humans could wait. Humans could become part of the environment when they needed to. Below, in a different part of the jungle, Thexlar and his pack had made camp. They were frustrated but not worried. The jungle was large, but their scanners had range. The human could not hide forever. Tomorrow we will find him, Thexlar told his warriors. He is alone, frightened, and making mistakes. We have all the advantages. But one of the warriors, a younger fighter named Kresh, was not so sure. Commander, what if this is intentional? What if he wanted us to lose his trail? Thexlar's eyes flared with anger. Why would prey want to be hunted longer? Use logic, Kresh. The human panicked and made errors. That is all. Kresh said nothing more, but he checked his weapons before he slept. The night passed slowly.
Hale did not sleep.
He could not afford to. Instead, he entered a state of rest the SAS had taught him. His body relaxed, but his mind remained alert, aware of every sound, every change in the jungle around him. Dawn came slowly, filtered through layers of canopy. Mist rose from the jungle floor. Birds began their morning calls. And Hale heard something else. Movement. Careful, but not careful enough. Through the mist, he saw shapes, 3 Xyrothi warriors moving in formation, scanning the area. They were not the main pack. These were scouts sent ahead to cover more ground. Hale watched them approach his trap line. They moved like soldiers in an urban environment, focused on threats at eye level, watching for ambushes from the sides. They were not watching the ground. The first warrior triggered the trap. The sapling whipped across with a crack. The toxic sap sprayed across his face and chest. He screamed, clawing at his eyes as the burning started. The other 2 reacted immediately, weapons up, scanning for the enemy. But Hale was not there. He was 60 meters away, watching through the leaves. The second warrior moved to help his companion and triggered another trap. This one was different. A weighted net made of vines that dropped from above, entangling him completely. The third warrior finally understood. This was not an ambush. This was a trap field. He started to back away carefully, warning the others through his communicator. He backed into the third trap. Sharp bamboo stakes, positioned at angles, hidden under leaves. They punched through his armor in 3 places. Not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to immobilize him with pain. Hale moved then quickly and silently. He approached the entangled warrior and, with 2 quick strikes, knocked him unconscious. He took the warrior's scanner and communication device. Then he disappeared back into the jungle before any reinforcements could arrive. 5 minutes later, Thexelar and the main pack arrived. They found 3 of their warriors injured and humiliated. One was still screaming from the burning sap. Another was tangled in vines. The third was pulling bamboo stakes from his legs. Impossible, one of the warriors said. These are primitive traps, children's tricks, but Thexelar understood. His eyes narrowed as he studied the trap layout. These were not random. They were precisely placed, perfectly positioned. The human had known exactly where they would walk, exactly how they would react. This was intentional, he said slowly. He left that trail yesterday to waste our time. While we searched, he moved here and prepared this ambush. He knew we would spread out. He knew we would send scouts ahead. But how? Kresh asked. How could he predict our tactics? Thexelar thought back to the arena trials. The humans had lost, yes, but they had been watching, learning. And this Marcus Hale, he had not fought in those trials. He had watched every moment. He studied us, Thexelar said quietly. While we mocked humanity's weakness, one of them was studying how we think, how we fight, how we move. Marcus Hale moved through the jungle like a ghost. He had been awake for 36 hours now, but his training kept him sharp. Sleep deprivation was something the SAS had taught him to manage. Pain was something he had learned to ignore. Fear was something he had learned to use. He studied the scanner he had taken from the Xyrothi warrior. It was sophisticated technology, but technology had weaknesses. The scanner used thermal imaging and motion detection, which meant it could be fooled by fire and animals. Hale spent the next 2 hours setting up his next trap. He found a section of jungle where a stream cut through rocky terrain. The rocks created natural choke points. He positioned himself on the high ground and waited. Then he used the Xyrothi communicator. He did not speak their language, but he did not need to. He activated it and made noise, breathing heavily as if exhausted, breaking branches nearby, creating the sound of someone trying to hide but doing it badly. The communicator broadcast his location to the Xyrothi pack. He counted to 30, then shut it off and moved. 20 minutes later, the Xyrothi arrived at the stream. They approached carefully now, weapons ready, scanning for traps. They had learned their lesson, but this time Hale had not set traps for them. He had set traps for the jungle itself. Across the galaxy, billions watched their screens in silence. The broadcast showed the Xyrothi moving carefully through the rocky terrain. It showed them scanning with their advanced technology. It showed them feeling confident again, back in control. Then the ground began to shake. Hale had spent an hour digging in the mud upstream. He had created a dam using rocks and branches, blocking the flow of water. The pressure had been building, and when he removed one critical stone, the dam broke. Water surged down the stream, turning it into a raging torrent in seconds. The Xyrothi were caught in the choke point, standing on the lowest ground. The water hit them like a wall. 2 warriors were swept off their feet immediately. They tumbled in the current, their weapons torn from their hands, their scanners waterlogged and useless. One managed to grab onto a rock. The other was carried 100 meters downstream before catching a tree root. The remaining warriors scrambled to high ground, but they were separated now. Split into 3 groups by the terrain and the rushing water. Hale had already moved. He was a kilometer away, setting up his next surprise. He had found a nest of insects that the planet's database had warned about. They were territorial and aggressive when disturbed. Their sting was not fatal, but it was incredibly painful. Using smoke from a small fire, Hale carefully harvested some of the insect's nest material. He placed it in a sealed container made from large leaves. Then he positioned it near a game trail the Zirathi would likely use, rigged to break open when disturbed. He also prepared something else. Using the bamboo plants and vine, he created a series of noisemakers. Simple devices that would create sound when the wind blew through them. He scattered them in a wide area, creating dozens of false signatures for the Zirathi scanners to detect. By the time the Zirathi regrouped, wet and angry, they had lost confidence in their technology. The scanners showed movement everywhere. The communicators had betrayed their position. Even their superior strength meant nothing when the environment itself became the weapon. "This human fights without honor," one warrior spat. But Thexelar was beginning to understand something deeper. "No, he fights without stupidity. We have strength and technology. He uses intelligence and adaptation. This is what we missed about humanity." "Then how do we defeat him?" Kresh asked. Thexelar thought carefully. Every move they made, the human had predicted. Every advantage they used, he had found a counter for. It was like fighting an enemy who knew their tactics before they did. "We stopped using tactics," Thexelar decided. "We spread out and moved toward the extraction point. 48 hours is not much time. Eventually he must go there. We will wait for him." It was a good plan. Logical. The kind of plan that should work. But Hale was not planning to simply reach the extraction point and leave. That would not send the right message. He had 6 hours left before the 48-hour deadline, and he had decided to spend them teaching the galaxy a lesson. He began to hunt the hunters. Using the Zirathi scanner, Hale could see where they were positioned. 5 warriors, spread across a 2-kilometer line moving slowly toward the extraction point. They thought they were the predators setting a trap. Hale chose his target carefully, Kresh, the younger warrior who had questioned Thexelar's assumptions. He was slightly separated from the others, moving through a section of dense undergrowth. Hale moved into position ahead of him. He climbed a tree with thick branches and waited. Patience. The SAS had taught him that patience was often the difference between success and failure. Kresh passed below, his scanner showing nothing unusual. The tree was thick enough to block thermal signatures. Hale was holding his breath to minimize movement. When Kresh was directly below, Hale dropped. He landed on the warrior's shoulders, his knife already moving. But he did not kill. Instead, he struck the communicator, the scanner, the weapons, disarming, not destroying the warrior himself. Kresh spun, trying to throw the human off, but Hale was already gone, disappeared back into the undergrowth like smoke. Kresh stood there, weaponless, unable to communicate, alone in the jungle. He was not hurt badly, just humiliated, and suddenly terribly aware that he was now the prey. Hale did it again 30 minutes later. Another warrior, isolated, confident in his technology. Hale struck from surprise, took the equipment, vanished before a real fight could begin. The message was clear. "I can reach you whenever I want. I can take what I want, and you cannot stop me." In the command ship above, the Zirathi officers watched in growing disbelief. This was not how hunts worked. This was not how warfare worked. The human should be running, hiding, desperately trying to survive. Instead, he had become the apex predator. "This changes everything," the old veteran officer said quietly. "If one human can do this with no technology, with no support, what could humanity do with preparation? With numbers?" The thought rippled through the command ship, through the fleet, through the galaxy watching the broadcast. For 300 years, the Zirathi had conquered through superior strength and technology. But what if there was a species that did not need those things? What if there was a species that was dangerous precisely because they were underestimated? On the ground, Thexelar finally understood what he was facing. Not a warrior in the traditional sense, but something more dangerous. A survivor who had become an attacker. A prey animal that had learned to bite back. He activated his communicator to the entire pack. "All warriors converge on my position now." They gathered, the 5 of them, in a defensive circle. 2 were without weapons or equipment. All of them were exhausted, scratched, stung by insects and jumpy at every sound. "We have 3 hours left," Thexlar said. "The human must reach the extraction point. We go there now, together, and we end this." They moved as a unit, weapons ready, scanning constantly. No more spreading out. No more confidence. Just wariness and the growing realization that they had underestimated their opponent. Hale watched them from a distance, using the stolen scanner. He saw them heading to the extraction point. He checked his watch. 2 hours and 40 minutes left. Plenty of time. He began moving not toward the extraction point but in a wide circle around it. As he went, he prepared his final surprise. He used the last of his energy to set up one more trap field. But this one was different. This one was not meant to injure or capture. This one was meant to terrify. He created an array of noisemakers that would sound like movement from multiple directions. He positioned reflective materials to confuse thermal scanners. He even found a predator's den and carefully placed Zerathi equipment near it, making it seem like humans were everywhere. Then, with 1 hour left, he began his final approach to the extraction point. The Zerathi were waiting there in formation, weapons ready. They had chosen good defensive ground. They could see anyone approaching from any direction. But Hale did not approach. Instead, he activated every noisemaker at once. Sounds erupted from dozens of locations. The scanners lit up with false signatures. It seemed like an entire army was surrounding the extraction point. The Zerathi spun, trying to cover every direction at once. Their discipline held, but barely. "It is just tricks," Thexlar said, though his voice was uncertain. "One human cannot be everywhere." "But he has been," Kresh replied quietly. "Everywhere we went, he was there first. Everywhere we looked, he had already prepared. What if we are wrong? What if Earth sent more than one?" The doubt spread through the pack. They had been so certain of their superiority. Now they were jumping at sounds in the jungle. That was when Hale walked into the clearing. He did not sneak. He did not hide. He simply walked out of the jungle, his hands empty, his face calm. He was covered in mud, scratched from thorns, exhausted from 2 days without sleep. But he was standing. He was alive, and he was smiling. "Extraction point," he said simply, standing on the marker. 48 hours. "I win," Thexlar stared at him. This small, weak human who should have died in the first few hours, who had instead led them on a chase through hell, who had taken apart their tactics piece by piece. The extraction ship descended through Krava 9's atmosphere with unusual silence. No celebration. No victory music. Just the quiet hum of engines as it approached the clearing where Marcus Hale stood, waiting. Thexlar and his hunting pack watched from 30 meters away. They had not moved since Hale declared his victory. Their weapons were lowered. Their confidence was shattered. The greatest warriors in the Zerathi Empire had been outmaneuvered by a single human with basic equipment. The ship landed, and the door opened. General Moss stepped out, followed by Major Fletcher and representatives from every major nation on Earth. They had watched everything. The entire galaxy had watched everything. Hale saluted crisply, despite his exhaustion. "Mission complete, ma'am." Moss looked at him, at the scratches and mud and the hollow exhaustion in his eyes. Then she smiled. "Well done, Sergeant Major. Welcome home." But before Hale could board the extraction ship, Thexlar stepped forward. His forearms were empty of weapons. He moved slowly with none of his previous arrogance. "Wait," the Zerathi commander said. Everyone tensed. Moss's hand moved to her sidearm. Fletcher positioned himself between Hale and the alien, but Hale simply stood still, meeting Thexlar's glowing eyes with his own steady gray ones. "You have earned something," Thexlar said slowly. He reached to his belt and removed a curved blade. It was ornate, obviously ceremonial. "This is my honor blade. It has been with me for 50 years. Won in 217 duels." He held it out to Hale. "You did not defeat me in combat," Thexlar continued, "but you defeated me in something more important. You defeated my understanding of warfare, my assumptions, my pride." He paused. "Among my people, that is a greater victory than any physical fight. Take this blade. You have earned it." Hale looked at the weapon, then at Thexlar. He reached out and accepted it with both hands, showing respect. "Your species is worthy of the Empire," Thexlar said. "Not as vassals, as equals. Perhaps more than equals." The words seemed to pain him, but he said them anyway. "I will recommend to the Emperor that humanity be granted full membership status with all rights and privileges. "Thank you, Commander," Hale said quietly. "And for what it's worth, your warriors are skilled. But you've spent too long fighting species that match your style. You've forgotten how to fight enemies who think differently." Thexler nodded slowly. "A lesson I have learned, at great cost to my pride." He looked at the cameras still broadcasting, but perhaps a lesson the entire Empire needed to learn. The trip back to Earth took 3 days. During that time, Hale slept for 18 hours straight. When he woke, he found that everything had changed. Messages flooded in from across the galaxy. Some species wanted to establish diplomatic relations with humanity. Others wanted to study human military tactics. A few wanted to hire human advisors for their own armed forces. But most interestingly, several species that had been conquered by the Zirathi were quietly reaching out. They wanted to know more about this human-style warfare. They wanted to know if maybe, just maybe, the Empire could be resisted after all. Dr. Chen interviewed Hale during the return journey. It was meant to be a psychological debrief, but it turned into something more. "Did you know you would win?" she asked. Hale thought carefully. "I knew I had a chance. The Zirathi had never faced an enemy like me. They expected me to fight like a warrior, stand and face them. But I'm not a warrior in that sense. I'm a soldier, and soldiers use every advantage, every trick, every piece of terrain to survive and win. But you didn't just survive. You dominated them. You made them look weak." "I made them look inexperienced," Hale corrected. "There's a difference. They're strong and skilled, but they've spent centuries fighting the same way against enemies who fought back the same way. They forgot that warfare is about adaptation. The side that adapts fastest wins. And humanity adapts fast." Hale smiled slightly. "Humanity has been at war with itself for thousands of years. We've fought in every environment on Earth. We've developed dozens of different fighting styles, tactics, and strategies. We've had to adapt constantly because we've never had overwhelming advantages. We learned to use intelligence because we didn't have forearms or scales that stop bullets." Chen made notes. "The galaxy seems frightened now." "Frightened of humans." "Good," Hale said flatly. "Fear breeds respect, and respect means they won't try to make us vassals again." When Earth came into view, Hale stood at the viewing port, looking at the blue planet hanging in the black. It looked the same as when he left. But everything else had changed. The landing ceremony was massive. Every news organization on Earth was there. Millions of people lined the streets. Hale had become a symbol, proof that humanity belonged among the stars, proof that strength and technology were not everything. But Hale did not want to be a symbol. After the speeches and ceremonies, he requested to return to his unit. "The SAS, the regiment, home." "You could have anything," General Moss told him in a private meeting. "Name your rank, your position. The UN wants to create a new military division based on your tactics. They want you to lead it." "With respect, ma'am, no," Hale said. "I'm a soldier, not a politician. I belong in the field, training others, preparing for the next mission." "There will be a next mission," Moss said quietly. "The galaxy knows about us now. Some will want to be friends. Others will want to test us to see if you were just an exception or if all humans are like you." "Then we need to be ready," Hale replied. "And that means training." "Not celebrating," Moss nodded. "Very well, Sergeant Major, you're dismissed." "Return to your unit." Hale saluted and left. But before he could leave the building, Major Fletcher caught up with him. "Marcus, wait." Hale turned. Fletcher had a serious expression. "The intelligence agencies have been analyzing the Zirathi military databases we gained access to. There are things you need to know, such as, the Empire has conquered 300 worlds, but they did it through overwhelming force. They've never had to truly fight. Never had to adapt. And now other conquered species are watching what you did. There are rumors of resistance movements forming." Hale understood immediately. They think if one human can defeat the Empire's best, maybe they can too. Exactly. The galaxy is about to become very unstable. The Empire's reputation is damaged. Their tactics are exposed as predictable, and every species they've conquered is starting to ask questions. "That's not my problem," Hale said. "I did what I was sent to do. Survived and won Earth's freedom." "But you did more than that," Fletcher insisted. "You showed the galaxy that the Empire can be beaten. You created a spark that might become a fire." Hale thought about that for a moment. Then he shrugged. "Good. Maybe fewer species will be enslaved. Maybe the galaxy will be a bit more fair. But that's bigger than me, Tom. I'm just a soldier." "Just a soldier?" Fletcher repeated, smiling slightly. "Marcus, you're never going to be just a soldier again. You're the man who changed the galaxy. 3 months later, Hale was back at the SAS training facility in Hereford. He was running a training exercise, teaching a new batch of recruits about survival tactics, the same things he had used on Krava 9. The recruits looked at him with awe. Everyone knew who he was, what he had done. But Hale treated them the same way he had always treated recruits: harsh, demanding, professional. Strength doesn't win fights, he told them during a break. Intelligence wins fights. Adaptation wins fights. The enemy might be bigger, faster, and better equipped. But if you can think faster than they can react, you win. One recruit raised his hand nervously. Sergeant Major, is it true you defeated the Empire's best warriors with just a knife and some rope? Hale looked at the young soldier. I defeated them with preparation, observation, and the willingness to fight dirty. The knife and rope were just tools. The real weapons were up here. He tapped his head. Never forget that. Later that day, Hale received a classified briefing. The UN had established first contact with 15 new species. 5 wanted trade agreements. 3 wanted military training. 7 wanted defensive pacts against the Zirathi Empire. The galaxy was reorganizing itself around a new reality. Humanity was no longer the weak newcomer. They were the species that had beaten the Empire. The species that fought differently. The species that was dangerous precisely because they were underestimated. Major Fletcher was right. The galaxy had changed. And it had changed because one SAS operative had refused to accept that superior strength meant inevitable victory. That evening, Hale sat in the barracks with some of his fellow SAS soldiers. They were watching news reports about the Hale effect, as analysts were calling it. 3 species had declared independence from the Empire. 2 more were in open rebellion. The Zirathi were scrambling to control the situation. You started a galactic revolution, one soldier said. I survived a hunt, Hale corrected. What others do with that information is their choice. But you had to know this would happen. That showing the Empire could be beaten would inspire others. Hale was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled slightly. Maybe I did. Maybe that's why I didn't just survive. Maybe that's why I made sure to beat them so completely that no one could deny what happened. So you did it on purpose? Made them look weak? I made them look inexperienced, Hale said again. There's a difference. And maybe I wanted the galaxy to see that strength isn't everything.